All right, here's a interesting thing I picked up. I got it for I think about $30. It's in pretty bad shape, but it is a high-end speaker. When this thing's in good shape, they'll go for 500 bucks. So it's worth doing a little bit of work on. The metal part of it is in good shape. The base is corroded, but it'll polish up just fine. The driver, of course, the driver is open. 99% of them will be open. But none of that is the serious part. The serious part is that the horn has fallen over. What would happen is they would put them in the wrong position and it would fall over and clob onto the Bakelite. This thing's made out of Bakelite. And we have some of these pedals that are broken off of here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 pedals that are broken off. The rest of them are intact. Now, there are 2 ways we can go about repairing this. Okay, one way that I've seen done is they go in and they remark the pedals at the smallest that is still intact. They would remark them, and they would take a saw and they would just cut, and the outer inch or whatever of the horn would be just cut off, and it would be just a little bit smaller. And unless you knew what an Amplion looked like, you would never know the difference. Okay, now that is a little bit radical. If all the pedals were broken, that would be a viable thing to do. But we've only got 4 pedals to repair, and a couple of them are fairly straightforward repairs. This one here is real easy. This one here is real easy. So we've got 2 easy ones and 2 that are a little bit more difficult. So we can probably make an attempt to go ahead and keep this one original. The original size, that is. So we're going to see if we can restore this and make it into a very collectible, nice radio speaker here. All right, to get this off of here, I think it unscrews. Yeah, unscrews out of there. Whew, look at those threads on that thing. Wow. Okay, and we'll go ahead and we'll work on these. We're going to do that later. And this part here, we'll go ahead and I think that has to be pulled off, and down inside there's a bolt holding this. We have to get this off of here so where we can clean it up. And this part here, gravy, no trouble at all on it. And I'm not sure you can get this open. This is literally bent over. They just crimped it over. This base here, which is a slug of iron weight, this is bent over. Instead of screwed on, it's bent over. So I'm not sure we can get that off of there. We may have to leave that intact. We will. We'll just leave it on there. I'm not gonna risk breaking it. What? You want to be in the picture? Is that what you want? Huh? You come in here to be in the picture. Everybody likes to see you, so you can be in the picture. It's hot out. It's 100 degrees out right now, so she comes inside in the air conditioning. Okay, first thing we're going to have to do is see if we can get this driver to work. It's possible, it's not likely, but it's possible the cord is where the trouble is. No, it's in the driver itself. All right, we'll have to get the coil out of there. The coil has to be rewound. Okay, take loose the wires. Alright, that gets that wire off of it. Okay, now save all that. That's interesting. They use a little piece of brass in there to keep from shorting out the pole piece. They have one pole piece on the top and the other pole piece on the bottom. Interesting. Okay, to get that out of there, we have the linkage wire that goes on to the center. We'll have to unsolder that. Okay. Common sense. Label the stuff as you take it apart. Magnet's strong. What would be really nice is if it was just broken right on the top, but the chances of that are so zero. All right. Okay. That was broken. That was broken right at the top. Okay. I would be absolutely, it was broken right there, I tell you. No luck. No luck. Okay. So this thing is broken down inside, which means we got to pull this wire off of here, which is a major operation. All right, and we'll get a better X-Acto knife. Yep, that's a nasty job. There's probably 10,000 turns on here. You don't want to use the same wire back on there. You know, some people are tempted to use the same wire, and that wire is probably rotten. You don't know. You go ahead and get the whole thing working, and a month later another place in the wire breaks, and you'll be sitting there screaming because you didn't use modern wire. You want to use modern wire with either polythermalase or Formvar insulation. You know, if you try unwinding it, you're going to have a high speed. You can do it with a high speed motor and a ball bearing. You take it and stick this to a ball bearing, and you take a high speed motor like your drill motor and a spool, and you just take it and zzz, you just roll it off. But it'll take you half an hour. Okay. All right. Okay, we got to pieces of stickum tape. Okay. Okay, now, see, we've got the faceplate here. Okay, now we want to try to get it as centered as possible. Now we have to very carefully get this wire soldered to the lead. Okay, I got it wrapped around there. Let's see if I can. I'm working with number 44 wires. Okay. Formvar wire, insulated wire. It's a particularly tough insulation. Formvar is one of the best insulations there is. Now we're going to bend this around. It has a very good resistance to all kinds of abrasion, and it has a good insulation property. Now we're going to put a piece of tape on there just to keep it from trouble. Now, there are two things that you have to watch out for. One of them is little things on the sides that can catch the wire, cause a loop over. You don't want it to, when you're winding it on there, you don't want it to loop over the corner of the form and have that. It'll make a mess. So, now the next thing you got to watch out for is how much force you're putting on the wire, pulling it onto there. If you put too much force, it'll tend to swell out, and it'll make the outer form move outwards, and you won't be able to get back into the speaker. All right, let's go. We have a. I'm going to hold it by hand. I've got an automatic wire feeder on here, but it's a real pain in the neck to set it up. So I'm going to just feed it by hand because we're going to get this done quick. Now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to hold this up here because I want to let my hand pick up the stresses of the winding. See how it jumps and wiggles? Okay, that takes and makes it to where it doesn't break the wire. And I'm just going to feed it back and forth here and fill it up. One thing that helps, a piece of paper there, it makes it where you can see the wire. Against the background of that stuff, you can't tell where the wire is, but by having a piece of paper, you can see where the wire is. And we're ready to go. And now I got the paper there to where I can see the wire. Now I'm just going to feed it back and forth, back and forth. Alright, we're hauling ass. We got 3,000 RPM. Alright. Okay, that's it. Okay, now first thing I'm going to do before we go any further, you've never heard me cuss yet before, like what I would cuss if we measure this and we find it's open. ruin it. I'm not getting a reading. Let me try to put a little solder on it. I think I have it broken through. 4var is a tough insulation. There's no damn contact. It's open. Okay, somewhere down in there when I did it, it broke. I am going to say it was the junction. What I'm going to do, I'm going to put 500 volts on it. I've got a 500 volt power supply, and it's current limited to 30 milliamps. Okay, that will not burn the wire out, and yet it will arc over. I suspect when I soldered the connection, it didn't make a good connection. 477 volts. Let's see, I can get more than that out of it. 535 volts. Okay, here goes. Whew! There we are. Reading 50 volts across the coil at 30 milliamps. Aha! 1500 ohms. That's what we want. Alright, see what that did was it arced the place where it wasn't contacting. It was one of the joints, either the very bottom joint onto the lead wire. I didn't have it broken through the insulation, but that 500 volts, it just arced it over and welded the wire instantly. Alright, so we're in good shape. See, if it swells up too much, you can't get it into pole piece, and then you really have to cuss. I mean, then you just let loose with the worst cuss words you can imagine. Just, oh, make a sailor blush. Coil. Now, since this is an uninsulated, we don't want that to short that there. We got that glue on there, but what I'm going to do to make sure, I'm going to take some of this Mylar tape. I'm going to put a layer of tape, because if that coil shorts out, in the B plus circuit, you can have as much as 90 volts across that coil. And then we take this one and we put it over like that. Okay. Take this Mylar tape here. Okay. And I'm just going to take this Mylar tape and I'm going to wrap it around there a few times to really hold the thing down. Okay, and there's our coil rewound. Okay, the next thing we got to do is see if we can remember how it goes back together. Okay, good. Keep that lined up. Okay, then we got one that goes here. Okay, then we got a piece of paper that goes here. And then we've got the terminals. Let it go right here. Okay. Okay. We got that, and it doesn't touch any metal. Okay, now we measure here at the end of the wires. Success, 1500 ohms. Okay, now the next thing that has to be done when we solder the armature can be between the two, and it has to be right between the two pole pieces. If it's touching a pole piece, then you won't get any sound out of the speaker. It has to be right between the two. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take paper and I'll make a spacer here and see if that can be shoved in there. Okay, now I got 4 sheets of paper on each side, and that holds it right in the middle. Okay, now We've got it all put back together. Okay, frame screws are tight. That's centered right in the center. We have our paper spacers in there to space the armature directly in the center of the pole pieces. Okay, now we go down inside and we solder the armature onto the piece of wire to the diaphragm. Okay, if I pull the paper out, it should stay in the center. It better. Oh, it did. Gorgeous, gorgeous. That looks beautiful. Okay, now, signal generator. When it's on the horn, it'll make a hell of a lot more noise than that. But the main thing is that it works. Okay, that fixes our driver. Now, the next thing we got to have are the two little pins on the end of here. Okay, first thing we got to do is clean the horn completely. All right, we got our cleaner here. This is cleaner degreaser. You can get it at the grocery store in the cleaning products department. And we just spray it down. And this will take all the dirt and grease and stuff off of it. This gets all the years of fingerprints and cigarette smoke and whatever else happens to be on it. Okay. Now, that leaves it absolutely clean. You know, at first, I thought that this was a brown Bakelite, but it is not. The Bakelite is actually this kind of reddish color, and it has a brown paint over it. That's a big surprise to me, because I can look at the edge here where the cracks are, and it's that red color. It's not the brown. All right, we're going to clean this part. It's dirty too. Now we got to let all this dry, and then we got to buff this thing up. This thing used to be brilliant chrome, and now it's corroded, so I don't know if we'll get it back to brilliant chrome or not, but we'll make it look good. Okay, we're going to get this off the base so we can work on the base a little easier. We've got to machine the adapter that goes from here onto the driver. The driver's not original. It's made for some other kind of speaker. And the driver that matches on there, the adapter, is not the same. So we'll have to make a machine up an adapter. It shouldn't be too much trouble. And that has to fit onto there. Okay, that's not going to be too big a deal. Okay, now what we want is for the curves on these to be nice and smooth so they're easy to match. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these areas here and I'm going to go ahead and knock them out and round them off to where they're nice and easy. So that breaking. Okay. So maybe we can do that one a little bit too. We'll take these on the belt sander and we're just going to make them perfectly round so that we can make the pieces that go in there just perfectly round and easy to fit. See, by having these perfectly rounded off, it makes it to where it's a lot easier to trace and grind and make the pieces that fit in there to where they're going to fit perfectly. If they have jagged edges, you know, like that corners and stuff, it's very difficult to get the fit to be perfect. Here I have a sheet of Bakelite, not Bakelite, yeah, it's Bakelite, and this came from an old radio cover. This was an old Bakelite table radio that wasn't worth saving, and I just saved this Bakelite. I take all these old cabinets and I save that Bakelite. This is about 1/8 of an inch thick, which is similar to that, and it will work perfectly to make the pieces to go on here. You know, we could use wood and paint it and nobody'd ever know, but if we can use Bakelite, that'll be all the better. Okay, so I'm going to cut me a couple little strips here that'll be easier to work with and get busy at it. Okay, I just took it on the table saw and got a strip of it here. Okay, now what I'm going to do, I'm going to hold this very firmly. Somehow. And I'm going to take a scribe and I'm going to just trace. Okay, I got the outline traced on there of what we need. So I'm going to take the bandsaw and I'm going to cut that. That's pretty close. Now I'm going to take the belt sander and I'm going to round it off and I'm going to get it as close as I can to fit in there. Woo! Getting close. Getting real close. See, it's a lot easier to make a smooth curve than it is jagged edges. So when you're piecing something together like this, always smooth it off first and then fit. Hold this right in place. Okay, now that gives me the outer curve. The outer curve for the pedal. Okay, I'll go ahead and cut and saw and grind. Okay, see, and there's one of our pieces. And that fits perfectly on there. And the thickness of the material is so close, it's not going to be a serious mismatch. We'll just sand it in once we get it epoxied. We'll sand the groove, the joint in to make it match. I have got now the 4 sectors that we need, and they all fit very closely. The next thing we got to do is clamp them in place and glue them with epoxy. Now, something I'm going to do to make the epoxy stick better, I'm going to put a little slot in the very edge. Not a lot. I'm just going to go in about 1/16 of an inch and put a slot so that the epoxy will have more to grab to than just a flat surface. Just to make sure these things are on there good. To hold the thing in place, we're going to use duct tape while the epoxy sets. Alright, now all we do is we smear. Yeah. We got plenty of time on this. I don't have to hurry at all. We got a good 10 minutes before it hardens. See, by filling that slot up with epoxy, it gives it a lot more surface area to grab. Whoo, these things will be on there. Not likely to crack off by accident. They'd probably be strong enough, even just with a butt joint, just putting it straight on, but by putting that slot in there, you make really sure. I mean, heck, when you're talking about a $500 speaker, you don't want to do a crappy job on it. Have it fall apart on you. Now, this is just the first epoxying. We're not worrying about any gaps or anything like that. We're going to epoxy it on, let it harden, then we're going to grind it down to where it's perfectly matched, and then if there's any gaps or anything, we'll go back in with more epoxy and we'll seal it off. We'll fill them with epoxy and be done with it. Well, that was a good move. Take the dadgum backing off the tape before you need it. Some people are smart enough to take the backing off before they start. I just don't have that. I'm not that bright. See, the thing about this aluminum tape is it'll hold it on there, and you can bend it around to make it hold it in the exact position that you want it. And it'll stay. If you use plastic tape or something like that, then it has spring to it, and it'll pop back. But with this, you can just set it the way you want it, and it'll stay there. Aha. Okay, that's the first one. We can do two of them, this particular set of gluings. Okay? We can do this one over here, and then once these are hard, we can do the two center ones. When we get through grinding and sanding on it, the joint will be invisible. No, it will not be visible. Okay, now we have to let that sit for about 4 hours to harden, and then we'll go ahead and do the other two, and that'll be we'll be ready to start grinding on it. It's been a few hours, and the epoxy is pretty much dry. Go ahead and get this tape off of here. Alrighty. Okay, there's two petals that are done. Okay, well, we got a couple more to go. We're going to go ahead and see if we can polish this thing up. Use a wire brush. Well, that's about all that's going to do. I got another gizmo here. It's a buffing drum with sandpaper on it. We'll see what it does. I don't know if it'll do anything or not, but we'll try it. We may have to just paint the darn thing. Woo, that's going to be good. Then we'll polish that up after that with some finer stuff. Yes, that's going to be pretty. Okay. Now let's try the brush on it and see if the brush will shine it up. Whew. Oh yeah. Oh, that looks good. That looks really good. Woo! That's gonna be pretty sharp. Now we're using a buffing wheel, and we have two types of rouge. We have black rouge, which is used for the rough stuff, getting the basic shine, and then we've got the brown rouge that's used to go ahead and get that mirror finish on it. All right, we're going to go ahead and do the black rouge first and get it just buffed up, shiny. Oh yeah. Yee! All right, let's see. We got to go a little more here. Okay, there's our base. Woo! Look at that. Isn't it beautiful? Wow. Okay, we're just going to use a piece of this old radio panel here for the bottom. Okay. Now, hardest thing to do is we got these two holes to hold it on there, and that's got to go exactly right. Okay. Now, our filt, I'm just going to make here. This shit is wow. What is sticky shit? Oh. That is absolutely perfect. Alright, next thing we're going to do is go ahead and spray this horn. Alright, that takes care of that. We'll let that dry, and by tomorrow it'll be dry, and our horn, all the epoxy will be dry, and we'll start grinding on those and get them perfect. Okay, we're going ahead and we've got the epoxy hardened. Now I'm going ahead and grinding these off flat. Now, that gets them basically smoothed off. They're still a little bit rough, so we'll take some sandpaper now and finish them. Alright, that's a piece of 220. Let's see what that does. Wow, that's slick as a baby's butt. Okay, let's just do that to each of them. Okay, that's going to do it. That's going to do it. Okay, I'm going to sand the rest of these, and then we'll see what we got to do next. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to liquefy this paint. I'm taking lacquer thinner, and I'm just going over this paint to liquefy the top surface of it. What that does is it removes all of the grease and stuff from years past. We washed it off in the sink, but that doesn't liquefy. This actually takes the top surface and liquefies it, and we're removing a thin layer of the paint. And this is going to make it to where the new paint sticks very well to it. There's a slight crazing to the paint as well, and by liquefying it you get rid of that crazing. So I'm not going to take the paint off altogether. I'm just going to go ahead and take that top surface and liquefy it enough so that those little hair fine cracks that are in the surface are blended together. Okay, now I'm going to set that aside to dry completely, and then we'll go ahead and buff it up. Okay, this is dried up. Now, we have a little glaze on here. When we liquefy it, when it hardens, it has a glaze. That's not good for the new paint to stick to, so I'm going to take this fine steel wool, and I'm just going to break the glaze from where we have gone ahead and liquefied. This will make sure the paint sticks good. Supervisor's taking a nap. All right, and to get that powder off of there, I'm just going to wipe it off a little. Supervisor's taking a nap. Oh. And to get that powder off of there, I'm just going to wipe it off a little. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to try using the Rust-Oleum brown, Kona brown, directly and see what it looks like. It may not be dark enough. I'm going to just try it on one just to see. We can always wash it off with the lacquer thinner. But I want to see if it's dark enough to look good. Okay, now I'm going to let that dry, and we'll see what that final color turns out to be. We've let this dry, and we can see the shade of the brown is slightly lighter than the original. It doesn't really look bad, but it doesn't really look good. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, we're going to go ahead and mix the paint and make a little bit darker brown and be done with it. Even though it means more work, we'll go ahead and do it anyway. Alright, to do that, we need some brown and we need some black. We're going to have to make it darker, so we can't do it in the can. Alright, what I'm going to do, we're going to punch a hole in the can to bleed off the pressure. Always punch the hole in the dome top. Put just a small pinhole and just let it bleed off. Don't try to spray it out right now. I mean, it'll go everywhere. See, it's got quite a blast there. Wait until the pressure is almost gone, and then go ahead and turn it up, and it'll just bleed the rest of the paint out into the jar. You'd be surprised how little paint there is in a can like this. A lot of it's propellant. But we just bleed that off. Takes about 5 minutes, and then we just put the paint in the jar here so we can mix it with some black. I've got some black here that we'll use to darken it up. Now, don't tip the can or anything while it's bleeding pressure off, or else you'll have paint all over the dadgum place. You don't have to worry about the can exploding or anything like that. That's nonsense. It won't. You just make a little pinhole in it, and it'll bleed the pressure off completely safely. But don't try to get the paint out of it until that pressure is down to barely going. Right now we're still really blowing. About half of what's in there is the propellant, and that little bit left is the paint. And the pressure is almost gone in here, so we're going to turn it upside down and just set it here, and we're just letting it blow the paint. See, the paint's coming out of there, and we're just going to set it there and let that paint blow into the jar. Alright, there's nothing left in the can. We're completely empty on that. Now, I'm just going to put the cover loosely on there. We still have propellant leaking out of there. It foams out of there for about a half an hour, so you don't want to tighten the cover on it or it'll possibly break the jar. Now we're going to need some black to mix with it, so what I'm going to do, I don't need a lot of black, so I'm going to save the black in the can. I'm just going to spray some out into a container. Alright, getting the paint out of here without getting a big mess all over everything is quite a trick. There's a way of doing it without getting in a mess. Stick the can inside of a plastic bag and just loosely hold it shut. See if you can get hold of it, and okay, I think that's going to be enough. Don't dump it over. Okay. All right, that gets us, looks like maybe 2-3 spoonfuls of black. All right. Now we don't want to overdo this, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix 1 tablespoon of black okay. Looks like the whole thing. It's surprising at how much it takes. Alright, that looks noticeably darker, but not even near what we want. Okay, let's go again. By doing this, you can make the paint any shade of brown you want, from anything from almost black to its original Corona brown, or whatever they call it, Kona brown. We've hardly got our hands dirty at all. Add about half of that. Alright, it's getting darker. Okay, I'm going to get a paintbrush and I'm going to try a little on here just to, whoa, almost dumped it, and see what shade it is. Substantially darker, but still we're not quite to what we want. Okay, I'm going to add the rest. You don't want to smoke or anything around when you're doing this. The propellant in these new cans of paint is flammable. Ooh, that looks good. That looks really good. That's almost indistinguishable. Okay, we got our new shade of brown here. It's maybe a third of a can, a quarter of a can. Wasn't very much. It was about equal to this half full to add to a full can of the other. We're ready to paint. I think I should do the inside first. That looks gorgeous. Alright, that's it. We let that dry. Okay, well, it's been sitting overnight and the paint is dry, and oh, does it look good. Woo, yes. Alright, well, it's time to put it together. We got our nice, beautiful base here, all polished and beautiful. What I'm going to do before I put it together, I'm going to go ahead and put some wax on that. Just plain old car wax. Okay, we just let that kind of dry a little bit. A piece of an old sweater here that makes a good buffing rag. Wow, that looks super duper good. Alright, now we've got these, which are a little bit, to say the least, dull looking. Okay, I'm going to go buff them with the brush. Alright, we got those all nice and polished up. Okay, now we take this thing. Well, I don't have the wrench. Okay, now we've got that on there, we got to take this thing and it screws into here. It's not as easy as it seems. The threads are very, 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 very poorly fit, and they cross thread instantly. There. All right, that's in there. Ooh. Wow. Boy, does that ever look nice. Ooh. That looks very, very nice. Okay? You can hardly tell where the repairs are. You can see a little bit in there, but it's not bad. Not bad enough to make any difference. Okay, now we got to put the driver on there, and then it's going to be done. Now we've got to put this thing on there. Well, there it is. Isn't that beautiful? Well, that's our Amplion speaker. Finally, I've got one. I got a mini Amplion, and this is now the full-size one. Okie dokie.